Two white officers stopped Marsha Wilson on the road, unaware they were confronting their new boss, a black woman determined to challenge a system built on bias from day one. Their brazen racist questions were not only an insult to her, but also a stark reminder of the very things she had come to fight against in this city. When she revealed her true position, their expressions shifted, realizing that this day would change their lives. What happened next would shock even those who thought they'd seen it all. But let's take it one step at a time. Marsha Wilson gripped the steering wheel tightly as she drove into the city. Today was her first day as the new chief of police. Although it should have been a day of celebration, she felt tense. After years of battling racial discrimination, she knew her new role wouldn't be welcomed by everyone. The city she was heading to was known for its conservative views, and many in the police force had openly voiced their discontent with her appointment. As she drove, the flashing lights of a patrol car suddenly lit up behind her, and Marsha instinctively tensed. She was being pulled over. Two white officers stepped out and slowly approached her car. The senior officer cast a dismissive glance at her car, while the younger officer immediately began with a suspicious question: "Where are the vehicle papers?" Marsha silently handed over her license and registration. The officers exchanged quick glances, a practiced routine between them, as if certain of their authority and complete control over the situation. "Did you violate something?" asked the senior officer, his tone already laced with judgment. "You know this area isn't the safest for people like you, right?" Marsha felt anger boiling inside, but forced herself to stay calm. She knew that every emotion she displayed would be scrutinized. This was no ordinary traffic stop. It was a display of power based on prejudice. Suppressing her frustration, she observed their every move as they prolonged their inspection of her documents, seemingly trying to make her as uncomfortable as possible. The younger officer, despite finding nothing suspicious, still wasn't ready to let her go. "What's your purpose in this area?" he asked, his voice insistent, almost challenging. Marsha recognized the situation was slipping beyond professionalism. These officers were determined to find something to justify detaining her, but she couldn't afford to give them that chance. Though her heart pounded, she kept her composure. "I'm on my way to work," she replied curtly. The young officer squinted, not satisfied. "And what kind of work do you do, if you don't mind me asking?" His tone sounded like a taunt. Marsha paused, studying their faces. She felt an urge to reveal the truth and end this farce, but she didn't want to start her first day with a confrontation with her subordinates. Calmly, she replied, "You'll find out soon enough." The senior officer, sensing the situation's awkwardness, tried to reassert control. "All right, that's enough," he said roughly, as if dismissing her. "We could detain you for further questioning." This statement struck a nerve in Marsha. She knew she had every right to be there, but their arrogance and confidence in their impunity fueled her anger. She felt an internal struggle. Should she reveal her position now or let them go further? Taking a deep breath, Marsha decided her patience had run out. She looked the senior officer in the eye, realizing she could no longer let them dictate the situation. "That's enough," she said, her voice firm but calm. "I'm your new boss, Captain Marsha Wilson." Both officers froze, their eyes wide in shock, their faces a mixture of confusion and disbelief. For a moment, silence filled the air, thick with tension and unease. The younger officer looked bewildered, but the senior officer immediately grasped the gravity of the situation. You're the chief," he stammered, his confidence evaporating instantly. "Yes, and I'd like to know why you stopped me and why this interrogation is still ongoing," Marsha continued, maintaining steady eye contact. The younger officer, still trying to process the revelation, looked to his partner, who now fully understood the predicament. Trying to regain control, the senior officer's tone softened, almost pleading. "I'm sorry, Captain. This was a mistake. A misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," Marsha echoed, letting the absurdity of the situation sink in. "Or is this how you treat citizens based on their appearance?" The officers had nowhere left to retreat. The senior officer struggled to justify their actions, but each excuse sounded weaker. Meanwhile, the younger officer began to see the situation clearly, realizing their actions had been driven by bias rather than duty. Marsha wasn't going to let them off easily. She knew this moment could be pivotal, not just for these two officers, but for the entire department. Maintaining her calm but assertive tone, she continued, I don't need apologies. I need to understand why the system you represent thinks it's acceptable to stop black citizens without cause. She emphasized each word, asking, how often does this happen? How many people like me have been stopped simply because they didn't fit your idea of who should be driving this car? The officers remained silent, unable to respond. They realized that standing before them was not just their new boss, but someone who fully understood the flaws in their methods. You'll be reporting to me during the first week about every vehicle you stop, Marsha said firmly, and I'll be reviewing how closely your actions align with the law and professional standards. The younger officer looked completely deflated, and the senior officer, realizing the severity of the situation, struggled to keep his voice steady. We'll do everything as you said, Captain. We didn't realize. That's the biggest problem, Marsha interrupted. You don't even realize what you're doing. Leaving them standing in silence, she returned to her car, steadied herself, started the engine and drove off, leaving the two officers to reflect on their actions. But she knew her work had only just begun. Later that day, Marsha gathered all the officers for her first meeting. She understood that change in the system had to start from the top. In front of the entire team, she recounted what had happened and made it clear that such behavior would no longer be tolerated. She didn't blow it up into a scandal, but ensured everyone knew that things would be different from now on. Every officer in the precinct needed to recognize their responsibility in treating all citizens fairly, regardless of race or status. The story quickly spread throughout the community. For some, it was a sign of progress, for others, a warning. The media picked up on the news, and Marsha soon became a symbol of the fight for justice and reform within the system. She understood that much work lay ahead, but this first step was crucial. Now she realized that her role wasn't just a title, it was an opportunity to improve life for those who had long suffered from injustice.